70 cents of every dollar spent on third-party sellers in the United States goes through Amazon. And you're a third-party seller. Does Amazon have unfair market power over you? Quite literally, the third-party seller is Amazon's customer. That's who is paying Amazon. The EU has a shot to pull this off.
Finally, there is a legitimate case being presented by one of the government regulators, and it's the EU. I got to give the EU credit here. Basically, this article is saying that in the next couple of weeks, there should be a complaint filed by the EU for an antitrust suit over Amazon's treatment of third-party sellers. We've been talking about this ever since the show came out, almost a year ago now. Our anniversary is in July. So this has always been the case where producers, we had Tim O'Reilly on the show a few weeks ago. This is literally what we were talking about with Tim, that platform monopolies, they take advantage of suppliers first. Don't even worry about the consumers. That is how this case could unravel, is if the EU tries to overcomplicate it and say, well, you were taking advantage of suppliers, which then adversely affected the consumer. That will make this case very easy for Amazon to wiggle their way out of. If the EU just keeps this focus, singularly focused, that Amazon's a monopoly, that they take advantage of their suppliers, their third-party sellers, and by doing so, they are taking advantage of their customer, and that sellers are a customer, the case is won. It's very easy to prove that Amazon's taking advantage of sellers. Amazon is a vertically integrated business where they have their own product lines that are directly competing with third-party sellers to launch their own products, and they're directly competing with third-party sellers to go from a 3P relationship to a 1P relationship where they are sourcing the product directly from the manufacturer and then driving down the margin of the third-party seller. We've spoken about that on the show ad infinitum and talked about many examples about Amazon product managers cutting out third-party sellers, getting purchase orders from the third-party seller, going around the third-party seller to source the product directly from the manufacturer. Can't do that kind of stuff these games. And the Wall Street Journal had an article maybe a couple months ago talking about something we spoke about on the show last fall about using data from third-party sellers to help the Amazon's white label products, and so on and so forth. So I think that's what this case is going to be about, which is a good thing. Now, a couple interesting tidbits on this. So there's some reference to where Amazon was testifying in front of Congress last year, almost about 10 months ago now. And so I want to play a couple clips from that and highlight a couple things that they said.
Several reports by leading economists and competition experts also suggest that the dominance of these firms is unlikely to be challenged by new rivals due to certain features that characterize digital markets. As these reports have found, the combination of high network effects, high switching costs, and the self-reinforcing advantages of data can result in a winner-take-all market that shield dominant firms from competitive threats. At the same time, there's growing consensus among venture capitalists and startups that there's a kill zone around Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple that prevents new startups from entering the market with innovative products and services to challenge these incumbents. And in recent years, the number of technology startup financings has dropped significantly, from above 10,000 startup financings in 2015 to just above 6,000 in 2018, while the number of venture capital deals for investment beneath $1 million have also declined signisignificantly.
Does that sound familiar? We've actually talked about those exact same stats on the show as well. So that was kind of a nice overview, right? But there's another clip here from Amazon's lawyer.
Amazon sales online, U.S. retail shares growing at a faster rate of all companies or along the same level as other companies. So I know Walmart's put a lot of investment into their online platform. How do you compare to a Walmart or to other retail stores online?
Thank you for your question. The third-party reports I've seen report Walmart growing at a faster rate than we are online.
Okay, your written statement suggests that Amazon competes directly with other sellers, serves competing sellers as a distributor, and serves other sellers simply as an online marketplace platform through which they can reach their customers, which you had testified before. Explain to me how that does or doesn't translate into whether Amazon is leveraging allegedly dominant retail market power into anti-competitive behavior against those other sellers?
I think the clearest answer to that question is from the evidence showing how much we've invested to help those third-party sellers since we invited them into our store grow. They're now the majority of our sales, and they're growing twice as fast. We think that's great for these small and medium-sized businesses, and it's great for our customers.
I think this is going to be the crux to. So Jeff Bezos is actually going to testify in front of Congress. I think very much so about this topic. I think that's going to be the crux to what Amazon's saying is, hey, look, these sellers are a majority of the stuff that we sell. We support these sellers. Look at how much we've been supporting these sellers. Look at how much they compose a dominant force of all the share of what we sell on Amazon, which is a true statement, but it's not getting at the problem. And this Mr. Stubbe guy doesn't really do a very good job of, you got to ask these lawyers very specific questions. If you leave them open-ended questions, they know how to spin it. So he didn't ask very good questions, but this one I think represents what Amazon's going to come back and say. Now, okay, well, what would you say? What should the EU say in response to that? Or what should these Congress people ask Jeff Bezos when he testifies? Now, here's the thing. Let's look at the top share of e-commerce in the United States. This is e-commerce, right? It's not marketplace sales. So now, it's a very good thing what Amazon is doing for third-party sellers on Amazon. It's a true statement. What Mr. Sutton, Amazon's lawyer, said is true. They are helping to build a lot of small businesses. They're helping a lot of small businesses reach customers that they would not have been able to reach otherwise. This is the whole platform value prop, right? This is why platforms by and whole are very good for society. And look, Amazon as a whole overall is absolutely a positive force for society, for the economy, for small businesses. Don't get me wrong. Amazon absolutely creates a huge amount of value for both consumers and producers. What we're talking about here are the fringes. What we're talking about here is are a small portion of the suppliers that get taken advantage of and allowing for protections for those sellers, because right now there is no recourse for those sellers. And Stubbe, the congressman, touched on this a little bit to say you have market dominance. Amazon, how much market dominance do you have? And Sutton, the lawyer, said, oh, well, I think Walmart's growing faster than us. Well, geez, I would hope Walmart's growing faster than you. But the question is, again, what is the base? Because if you have a base of 39% market share and Walmart's growing faster than you and they have 5% market share, well, that would make total sense. But still, it doesn't represent that you have 7 or 8 times the market share that Walmart does have online, right? So again, a nice little sidestep by Sutton. What these numbers don't show you is the marketplace market share. What do I mean by that? If I'm a third-party seller and I want to sell stuff online, how much market share does Amazon have of third-party sales? Well, we can kind of put some rough math around that. Amazon of last April 2019 shareholder letter had about $270 billion in total GMV in the United States. About 58% of that or so was from third-party sellers. So you do the math, Amazon has about $170 billion of third-party sales. It's probably a little bit more now, $170 to $200 billion of third-party sales. So I'm a third-party seller. That's a pie of $170 to $200 billion of stuff that Amazon is now allowing third-party sellers to fulfill. Okay, who would be the number 2 marketplace seller behind Amazon? It'd be eBay, not Walmart. This is e-commerce. So all of eBay's sales is marketplace. eBay doesn't vertically integrate. They don't sell stuff on their own, right? As a reseller, they don't white label their own products. They're purely marketplace. So that 4.7% of e-commerce share, that is all marketplace third-party sales. The estimates for eBay is somewhere around maybe $30 billion, $35 billion in total GMV in the United States. You got to take out a little bit of that money for auto sales because it's a little bit different. I don't know. Let's call it $30 billion. So $170 billion for Amazon, number 1. Let's call it maybe $35 billion for eBay. 60% of eBay's sales, they've got about $90 billion in GMV. About 60% of that is outside of the United States. So we're just trying to look at the US GMV here. And then you could look at Walmart. They talk about their overall e-commerce sales, but they don't disclose how much of e-commerce is actually comprised of third-party sellers. By our Applico internal estimates, it's maybe somewhere around $20 to $30 billion. So a little bit behind eBay, let's say, right? So now it trickles off real fast, right? Look at this. Home Depot, Apple, they don't have any third-party sales. Wayfair doesn't have third-party sales. Best Buy, Target, Costco, Macy's. I mean, maybe they have some, but it's so minuscule. It's really not even on the radar here. What now you need to look at are other marketplaces like The RealReal, which just went public, Farfetch, public, but based in the UK, Goat and StockX, sneaker marketplaces. So now you're looking at these niche kind of vertical specific marketplaces, RealReal and Farfetch and luxury goods, Goat and StockX and sneakers. Goat and StockX are maybe doing like $1 billion in GMV. Farfetch, and I think Farfetch is maybe doing $4 billion in best case scenario annually GMV. Etsy doing about $4 or $5 billion in GMV. So anyway, you add that all up and you say, okay, between Walmart estimate, eBay, Etsy, Farfetch, RealReal, what's the US portion? StockX, Goat. I don't know. Maybe there's $75 billion of third-party sales from marketplaces not called Amazon. So if, let's say there's a total market of $250 billion. Let's say Amazon has $175 billion of third-party sales. Add the other $75 billion from everyone else. And then you have, Amazon has the 175 of the 250. And what does that come out to be? It's 70%. It's an approximation, but it's well over 50%, right? And I think it could actually be higher than 70%. We don't have the exact data, right? But this, to me, that's all you got to look at if you're the EU. Now, the numbers are going to be different because the EU is going to look at the European market. And the numbers actually might even be more skewed against Amazon. So Amazon might actually have even more market dominance. I haven't run the numbers for the EU. But you just look at the United States. If Amazon has 70% of every dollar, 70 cents of every dollar spent on third-party sellers in the United States goes through Amazon, and you're a third-party seller, does Amazon have unfair market power over you? I mean, the answer is obvious. Absolutely, they do. Then the last piece of this argument is, why are third-party sellers considered customers as opposed to suppliers? And that really goes to the point of saying that, who does Amazon make their money off of, right? A customer is someone that I'm charging. Customer is someone that, should be able to have choice about who they use, right? That's the whole thing, kind of consumer choice. And the customer is someone I'm making my money off of. So who does Amazon make their money off of? When a customer buys a product on Amazon that is sold by a third-party seller, who's paying Amazon? The customer, the consumer, or the third-party seller? So the answer is actually it's a third-party seller. Amazon's taking a 5, 10, 15, sometimes now 20% fee from the third-party seller. So quite literally, the third-party seller is Amazon's customer. That's who is paying Amazon. And then you say, okay, well, these people are paying Amazon, third-party sellers. Amazon has over 70% market share, right? That customer, those sellers, have to go to Amazon because Amazon has 70% of that market, if not more. That's called monopoly. That's called customer relationship. And then you now layer in all these examples, which we've covered many times on the show, of different ways that these sellers get taken advantage of by Amazon. Now, this isn't a directive from Jeff Bezos to say, hey, go take advantage of these sellers. This is what happens when you have this huge machine called Amazon. You have mid-level management and some upper-level management. They have quotas. They have KPIs that they have to hit. And then they say, oh, well, hey, colleague, if you could just give me this data, Or, hey, seller, if you could just give me this purchase order. If I could just get access to that information, well, now I could make my product a little bit better. Well, now I could go buy these products from the end manufacturer and cut out the seller, and I get a little bit more margin. That is the kind of bad behavior that we're talking about here. That is the kind of bad behavior that needs to be reined in. Doesn't mean that you have to break up Amazon, but it does mean that you need to protect the third-party sellers to promote more competition amongst third-party sellers and amongst marketplace competitors. That's what we're talking about. The EU has a shot to pull this off. They really do have a shot. I think this is their best shot so far. We will see if they're able to thread the needle on this one. I hope that they do. I hope they don't get distracted by trying to bring the argument back around to the consumer. And I hope the DOJ, the US, is taking note here, because it's actually unfortunate that the EU is much more progressive in this area than the United States, because it's much better for the United States to be able to set the precedent around how to propose decent regulation for tech monopolies. And my fear is that the EU does land the ball on this, but then when it comes to how to regulate and how to regulate properly, that they mess that part of it all up. But we'll see. One step at a time. Believe me, you will be the first to know about it from Winner Take All. Hi, this is Alex from Winner Take All. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to leave a comment, ask us questions, and definitely make sure to join us on our next live stream.